All right, good morning, everyone. We're going to get started now. I do want to introduce a couple of our speakers. Now, today we do have speaking Jared Spaniel out of our Northern California office. Jared is pretty new to DDI, coming up with or going through all of his certifications, get certified through the SOLIDWORKS process. He's going to be helping me present some of this material today. I'll also be there, Brad Rock. I'm in our Southern California office, particularly out of San Diego. Hopefully, you've all heard my webinars before or attended some of the events that I've done previously. Also on the line, we have Quentin Rock. Quentin's been with DDI for a very long time. He's one of our senior applications engineers. He'll be answering questions. So if you guys do have questions that you want to ask, he'll be able to answer them throughout the webinar, or we'll try and get back to you at a later time today. Also helping Quentin out, we do have Alex Frink out of our Arizona office. He's one of our application engineers. And we have actually broken the presentation down to you guys, for you guys into 4 different sections today. So today we'll be going through the content for user interface, basic fundamentals of SOLIDWORKS. We'll also talk a little bit about the installation changes, including what's happening with the packages this year, and also talk a little bit about the additional family products that have been introduced to SOLIDWORKS. All right, so let's jump in. Let's start talking about what's new in SOLIDWORKS 2016. That's what you all came here for, right? So I have some great new user interface enhancements this year. A couple of the big ones that you're going to see as soon as I open up SOLIDWORKS. Hopefully I'm not too shocking. Hopefully it's not going to scare anybody away. We've gone through and looked at updated graphic icons. There's been a remodeling of the user interface to make it cleaner and more modern. Hopefully you'll all agree with me. And we've also gone through, enhanced the workflow, save you guys time, and mouse travel. Mouse travel is a big one for me. Hopefully it's all for you guys as well. Try and reduce the amount of carpal tunnel you're going to get. Simplify the process for determining dependent features. Sounds like a mouthful, but stick with me. I'll show you what's going on. And we expedited the mating process. So with that, let's go ahead and jump into SOLIDWORKS and see what's going on this year. So first things first, I'm sure you're all going to look at this thing and you're going to see that there has been a significant change to SOLIDWORKS, right? It feels different than it has in previous years. Let me first say, nothing major has changed with SOLIDWORKS. All we're simply saying is that the graphics have changed. We've gone through and there's been a change in the color scheme of the software itself. We've also gone through and there's been updates to all the different icons. So all the different icons have lost a lot of their yellows and greens that we've seen in the past, and have become more of this modern imaging, this monotone image. So there's a reason for doing all this. All of these graphics or all these icons have been updated with what's known as a vector graphic. So for those of you that are very image inclined, you understand the difference between the vector and raster graphic. The real reason we've done this is because there's a lot of users that have started to really adopt this 4K and 5K resolution. Now 4K, 5K resolution, these are very high-res images, right? So the problem with SOLIDWORKS was you were trying to bring SOLIDWORKS with all these different raster graphics into a very high resolution, and it was starting to pixelate, or the quality of the software wasn't looking so great. So to fix that, or to alleviate that problem, we've actually gone in and redesigned the software this year, added all these different raster graphics, so now we can support the 4K, 5K resolutions that hopefully a lot of us are very into. I know myself I am. Everyone likes to make fun of me for how small my icons are on my desktop, but for those of you that agree with me, you all understand the pain, right? All right, so let's jump forward. Let's talk a little bit more about some of the enhancements that have gone. Hopefully we've all gotten over the shock now of seeing what 2016 looks like. You'll notice that it's all the same great stuff, right? Everything's in the same location, just the icons have been a little bit updated, and the color interface changed just slightly. Now, for some of the biggest enhancements, some of the most groundbreaking enhancements I feel for this year, I'm going to start with the command manager. Now this is part of one of the questions that I've already asked so far today for that first poll question. When was the command manager introduced? The command manager is something that's probably one of the most popular features inside of SOLIDWORKS, just the ability to jump through different feature tabs and to start activating different components in this thing. Now, the major problem that we've all had with the command manager in the past is that many of us would use this thing and that suddenly it would end up in the middle of our screen, right? Simply by dragging it or by clicking and not realizing that we're moving it, we'd simply drag this thing away from its docked location and it would start to float. We would lose it on a second monitor. It would start to float behind our model or sitting in the corner. We'd always struggle with this. New in 2016, you'll notice that it's it's much more refined in how this thing actually can be moved. You'll notice that if I'm trying to click in this blank space and drag it off, I'm actually getting this feedback telling me that the command manager can only be undocked by dragging on these tabs down here. So by dragging it over here or dragging one of these icons off, I can't accidentally move this command manager anymore. I think this is incredibly important because you don't know how many times I've actually made this mistake. So to move the command manager now, you'll notice that the only way to grab it and to actually pull it off the docked position is to simply grab this tab here and pull it away. Then we have the same behavior that we've had in the past where we can actually manipulate it, start docking into its different locations and start pushing it around. But for some of us that like to keep it on top, I'll go ahead and leave mine there. Additionally, for those of us that don't ever move the command manager around, there's also the ability now to lock this thing, so it can't be undocked. You'll notice that that's actually in the Customize tab. We have this new feature for Lock Command Manager and Toolbars. So once we get everything in its nice oriented positions, we no longer have to worry about accidentally pulling that thing away, trying to figure out where this thing came from now that's floating in the middle of our screens. So we do have the ability now to come in, lock that thing, and it'll stay in its position for us. All right. Now, for the next enhancement that I have here, this is probably one of the most groundbreaking that I've seen in quite a while from SOLIDWORKS. Now, you'll notice that a lot of SOLIDWORKS users actually like to view their screen in this full screen scenario, right? Well, they actually minimize the feature manager so that they can see what's going on with the model. Now, the problem with this is when you try to go in and start editing different components or different features, that you always had to open that thing back up. It would come back over your model or start shrinking your model so that you could actually select the features or select the sketches. This year in SOLIDWORKS 2016, we've actually introduced this new feature called a breadcrumb. I'm going to repeat it a couple times just so you guys can remember this hopefully, but this new breadcrumb feature is something that will actually allow you then to access these different components of a feature or a part or an assembly simply by selecting this icon. And you'll notice in the top left-hand corner, we now have this, this breadcrumb feature that gives me the selection sets or these different sets based on what I've selected. So I've selected the face right now. I have access to that face itself. I have access to the components driving that face, so this loft, or even the sketches that are driving the loft itself, the body, the part, or even the assembly. From the part level, you can see that there's a little arrow telling me that from this part, we're actually driving a number of different mate conditions. So in each of these different cases, I can actually edit from this, this interface here. Now, I realize with it being in the upper left-hand corner, it doesn't save us a whole lot of mouse trouble, right? And that's what I promised you, is that we're going to try and reduce the amount of carpal tunnel that we're all going to get from moving our mouse left to right, left to right, left to right. So what we've done this year is we've actually introduced the D key. The D key will actually take any of these open interfaces like we're seeing with the breadcrumbs and bring it to your mouse. So simply pushing the D key after you select the face actually brings that breadcrumb now to your mouse. So from here, I can actually go in, we'll select on one of these different sketches, and I can start going in and just simply editing it without moving my mouse all the way to the command manager to start, or to the feature manager to access these different features. Now, that D key also works for other scenarios. So in this case, we've all become familiar with using that top right corner called the confirmation corner, right? Or in some cases, we're very familiar with going to the command manager itself and selecting the option for the exit sketch button, or even for the edit component button to exit the command or to leave those commands. The D key also brings down the confirmation corner for each of these different interfaces. So simply pushing the D key brings my confirmation corner to my mouse and will allow me then to exit the sketch and to exit that part. So lots of user enhancements to try and reduce the amount of mouse movement. Hopefully you'll agree with me as you start to play with 2016 a little bit more. Now, additional enhancements that have been made for SOLIDWORKS 2016 to try and kind of make this thing clearer, easier to use, you'll see that the command triad has also been edited. So as we come in here and we start doing something like a section view, anything that uses the triad that we've all become familiar with inside of SOLIDWORKS has now been edited. So the triad now looks something like this. So instead of the different colored cylindrical tubes that we were seeing running in circles, oftentimes very difficult to grab with the little green arrow inside of it, we now get this interactive triad feature. So everything's nice and orange, and I get this responsive feedback as I'm selecting the different components as I want to create a section view at an angle. I'm going to go ahead and slow down and make sure it's coming across on the webinar for you guys. I'm getting all this interactivity, so as I start to manipulate it, it's actually responsive for me. As I hover over a certain aspect of it, I'm no longer trying to guess whether or not I clicked on it correctly. It actually highlights for me, and this new other color, this blue color, so that I can start manipulating the model, manipulating the triad. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and save that option. We'll save that split screen or the section view that we did, and we'll notice that there's a number of different interferences that are currently occurring in this model. So we can edit this interference simply by using the breadcrumb interface that we've all become familiar with for over the last, hopefully, 30 seconds, right? So simply clicking on the model, pushing the D key will bring the breadcrumbs to me, and then I can start looking through the different mate components to evaluate which one is actually causing this thing to interfere. So in this case, I see that we have this first mate here, I can select the mate and start to edit the mates from this interface. From here I can go in and redefine the mate, and you'll notice in SOLIDWORKS 2016 that the mating conditions have actually changed. So every time I now select something when creating a mate, the first selection actually becomes transparent now, so that I can start to select the other entities that I'm interested in. So in this case, I selected the first component, this underside component, it became transparent, so I no longer have to do that right-click select other to try and get this thing all locked into its position. So starting to apply that first mate, using the first mate selection will actually cause the components to become transparent. All right, a couple more changes that we've seen this year in SOLIDWORKS 2016. We all became familiar, hopefully last year, with the dialogues on the feature manager that were allowing us to look at parent-child simply by hovering over certain components. This year, we've actually introduced the ability to do children as well. So in previous years, it was just parents only. So I'm going to go ahead and just hover over components inside of the feature manager, and you'll see that's actually showing me components both upstream and downstream. So we'll see parent components as well as children. This can be toggled simply by selecting the top level of the assembly and changing one of these dynamic reference options. So right selecting the top level of the assembly, we can go in and turn off the parent visualization or even the children visualization. So if you become very familiar with the parent option and aren't too fond of the children, you can select one or the other. All right, last couple of options that we have here for you guys. I do want to show you guys a couple more. One of these I think is probably one of the most important features is this one. So SOLIDWORKS has always been an interesting piece, right, when we're tackling different things like fillets. So I'm going to go ahead and edit this existing fillet. You'll notice that I have a number of different faces or different edges that have been selected to fillet. Previous years, this fillet box would be one size, right? This thing would all be stuck down to about this big, and we'd have to use this dialog to scroll through it. New inside of SOLIDWORKS 2016, all of these different dialog boxes for selection sets are all scalable. So we can pull these out to see all the different components that are inside of it to more easily identify what's going on in here. So I can simply now jump through and start seeing all the different selections that are being incurred inside of this, this selection set. Additionally, in each of these different dialog boxes on the left-hand side in the feature manager, these keyboard now functions properly. So if I was to hit tab, we can actually start tabbing through different components of this this feature manager. So all the keyboard shortcuts that we know and love in other software now function inside of the SOLIDWORKS Command Manager. Previously, we had to use our mouse to get to these different selections. Using the tab key and the spacebar, it can activate or deactivate different components. You'll see that just simply pushing the tab key now is causing my selection to jump to the next option in the tree. All right, last thing I have here for you guys on the user interface side, we do have a change to to this command manager feature, right? So each of us have become familiar every year as we turn on different features, like if I want to turn on a sheet metal, it'll add an additional tab for me. New in SOLIDWORKS 2016, if I was to turn on any of the simulation tools, we'll get two bars that are added for us. The normal simulation tool that's been added, we'll also get an analysis prep toolbar. Actually, it looks like I turned mine off, so I'll turn that back on here. The analysis preparation toolbar will turn on by default every time you turn on a new simulation. These are loaded with a number of different features to help you with that particular simulation. So in this case, we're looking at simple FEA. So we're looking at different ways of cleaning up the model or simplifying the model to make the simulation faster or better. In different tools like flow simulation, you'll see that it's more built to enclose watertight bodies. In the plastics, we'll see that there's more mold tools built into it, things for drafting and building in mold features. So depending upon the simulation that you've selected, you'll get an interactive or intuitive feedback. So let's jump back to the PowerPoint real quick and just real quickly cover all the details that we went over today. So like I said, for the first feature that we talked about today, we talked about our breadcrumbs, so that new interface that we can access any of the different features based on our certain selections. We have our updated graphics, our vector graphic icons, to enhance our 4K, 5K resolution. We have our redesigned triad, so that it's now responsive, easier to use. We have the ability now to lock the command manager. It's not as easy to drag that thing or manipulate it on accident. We have the transparent selection when mating, so when we create our first mate, the first piece that we click on will actually become transparent, so we can now click through it to do the second piece. We have scalable selection dialog. So as we go through and start doing additional selections, as we start creating fillets or chamfers or all these different things that use selection dialogs, we're actually able to scale that thing out and see all the different edges or pieces that are selected inside of it. All right, so that concludes my user interface section. We're going to go ahead and transition over to Jared for our fundamental section.
All right, guys, so the first thing we want to talk about today within fundamentals is 3D Content Central. So for those of you who don't know, 3D Content Central is a website, contains millions of 2D and 3D models from users and suppliers, and the purpose is it can accelerate your design process and save you a lot of modeling time and development costs by reusing these models. So some of the highlights this year, they've updated the website, making it easier to search and find content, improved interface. We have a new eDrawings viewer with some improved capabilities, which I'm going to show you guys, which is probably one of my favorite features. Expanded storage limits, and they also have a 3D preview and download of the models on your company's website. So let's go ahead and jump into the website real quick, and I'll kind of show you what 3D Content Central is about. So this is the homepage of 3D Content Central. It's just 3dcontentcentral.com. So I hope you guys are using this to make your lives a lot easier. We have a nice search feature here, and then there's also up in the Find menu, they broke it down into some more subcategories to make things easier to find, as well as having the suppliers list on here. So if you guys are using a specific supplier that you want to order parts from that supplier consistently, you can go ahead and try and see if they have your supplier on here, see if they have some models on there to help you guys out with finding and ordering those parts and importing the 3D models to SOLIDWORKS. So if we take a look at a part, we can see that we have this nice eDrawings viewer in here, which is exactly the same as pretty much what you get with eDrawings, and they brought over a lot of the features from eDrawings and SOLIDWORKS to make this really user-friendly to locate these parts, look at them, view them, make sure it's what you want. So we have this standard 3D rotation in here. We have the ability to change our views using the view cube, just like in SOLIDWORKS. We also have the ability to look at shaded, wireframe, solid model, solid lines. And then we have the section view, where we can section the part on different planes and check out the section views just to make sure we're getting that correct part. So that's pretty much the gist of 3D Content Central. I hope you guys are using that to kind of take advantage of some of those models and just make your lives easier. Just letting you know it's out there if you're not using it. Hopefully that'll get you guys interested in it. So the next section I want to kind of cover real quick is, I know 3D printing is getting huge. So SOLIDWORKS has kind of made a bunch of enhancements to support 3D printing this year. So now in the 3D printing property tab manager, you have a bunch of different capabilities. You can easily identify, you can easily run a preview analysis to identify faces that require more support for 3D printing. The Property Tab Manager also includes the ability to change the model scale and reorient the model to fit your specific print volume for the printer that you're using. Another great feature is you can also now specify a scale factor very simply to control the printed size of your model and change the scales on that model. Another thing they have is they added this striation lines feature. So if you want to determine whether your print resolution is sufficiently fine to produce a desired correct output, you can easily display the striation lines on the model, and basically you can see if there's any portions of the model where details may be lost while the printing takes place, and you can adjust those striation lines to kind of clean up some of that detail within your model. So the next thing on fundamentals, SOLIDWORKS introduced this improved error reporting dialog box this year. So, if SOLIDWORKS ever crashes, which we know never happens, the error report dialog box is going to give the user, you guys, some additional options for feedback. From this nice retooled dialog box, you can preview an error report. You can choose whether or not to send a crash report to SOLIDWORKS. You can indicate whether or not you've experienced any previous crashes in the same context, so they can kind of relate those two things. You can also run the RX diagnostics tool, connect to the CAD support, and of course restart SOLIDWORks. And hopefully if any recovery data is available, which I always hope it is so you guys don't lose your hard-earned work, you know SOLIDWORks is going to try to attempt to recover that work. So that's pretty much the improved error reporting dialog box. So the next improvement is the property tab builder. I know a lot of you guys like to use this to create some lists and custom properties in SOLIDWORks. So now we have the ability to support what they're calling conditional lists. So it's an extra feature within there, and I'm going to jump into SOLIDWORks and kind of show you guys what I'm talking about. So I just have here, I have a blank part document open, and the way you get to the property tab builder tool is just by using this home tab on the SOLIDWORks resources page, and it's over here under SOLIDWORks tools. We have the property tab builder. This is where you can add custom properties, you know, make your list for your parts or however you want to set up your custom properties tab. And then this tab here over here is the custom properties tab. And I already have a custom property built. I'm powering this off of an Excel spreadsheet, which you guys can easily set up and link to this custom property manager. So this here at the top under this group box is kind of the old way of doing things, where you can link, in this case I'm using a material and a finish for that material as an example. So if I select a material, SOLIDWORks wasn't always intuitive enough to know that the finishes here might not link up to that specific material. For instance, if I selected you know, a plastic, a PVC, some of these finishes I have on here might not be applicable to that material in this case. So now what they've introduced here is this new list box control, where it's more intuitive as far as what you're selecting. So if you select a specific material, it'll change your finishes to only fit that specific material. So if I pick a steel, I will have some finishes that make sense with steel, and vice versa. If I pick a plastic, I'm going to have some finishes that make sense with plastic. And of course, this will work with any custom properties that you guys need or want to set up, and you can set up, you know, any variety of custom properties. I'm just using material and finish in this case. So basically what I want to convey up there is that, you know, the ability of the finish to be dependent on the selection of material. Just makes it a little bit more intuitive for you guys and causes, you know, less user errors when you're selecting your custom properties. So the next thing we have for the fundamentals kind of section is the data import and export enhancements. They've kind of made a couple enhancements this year to what files SOLIDWORks supports and what you can bring in and import and export out. So to make it easier to share some design data in the building and construction industry, SOLIDWORks software now supports exporting to the IFC format, which is Industry Foundation Classes, the IFC 4.0 format in this case, and also exporting material properties to IFC 2x3 files to include mass, area, and volume can now be exported, as well as importing of PTC or Pro Engineer Creo 3.0 files are now supported in SOLIDWORks, which I think will be a great addition. Some of you Pro E users out there. And we've also increased the import size of some of these STL models. So now you can import an STL model with up to 500,000 facets, which is a marked increase of 25 times larger than was previously available for solid STL files. And now 5 times larger for surface STL files. So that's another great addition to SOLIDWORks 2016 this year, is the import and export enhancements of some of these files that you guys might be sharing or bringing in and out from suppliers or sharing within your own workspace. So now I'm going to go ahead and transition this back over to Brad.
All right, excellent, thanks. We'll get started on our installation section. Now, some of you guys might be bored just because I'm saying installation. Now, let me tell you guys that there is a lot of valuable information here for all of you. This is not talking about plugging in the disk and saying hit run and seeing how it installs. We're actually going to talk about some of the different changes that have happened in SOLIDWORks to make this thing more manageable, and also the changes that are going to affect each and every one of you. Now, for the installation features, what I do want to cover are the easier administration of SOLIDWORks installs, additions to the SOLIDWORks package, restructuring of the different add-in modules, more transparent system performance, and enhanced oversight of upgrading between versions. So a lot of these things are extremely valuable to each and every one of you. We'll get into them in just a second. To start off, I do want to talk about the different SOLIDWORKS packages, what they previously looked like in previous years and what they look like this year. So if we look at this, hopefully all of you have seen this diagram at least once as we look at the different levels of SOLIDWORKS, the standard, professional, and premium. Last year we actually saw professional had CircuitWorks introduced to it so that professional users in 2015 could use that function. This year there's been a number of different changes, and what I've done for you is I've actually highlighted them in green here. So on this next slide, you'll actually see that for each of the different levels, a number of different things have had that water trickle-down effect, that waterfall effect. So in our standard package, we're now including the utilities and the FeatureWorks. So the utilities are pretty powerful, especially for all those users that are working with multiple CAD systems or multiple engineers. So I highly recommend that you take a look at what's included in the utilities, also in the FeatureWorks. Now, these did come out of the professional package, so to replace them in the professional package, what you've seen is the Scan to 3D and the toll analysts have actually been moved out of the premium package. So to replace the utilities and FeatureWorks in professional, we're now seeing Scan to 3D and toll analyst. To take advantage of these, you guys would have to use SOLIDWORKS 2016. So these licenses would not come across to 2015. And in the premium package, what we're seeing is we've actually seen an introduction of assembly costing, or this roll-up costing. So new to SOLIDWORKS 2016, in our premium levels, we now have assembly costing. Professional now includes Scan to 3D and toll analyst, and our standard package actually includes utilities and FeatureWorks. There are additional changes that are coming later this year. One of those changes is actually called SOLIDWORKS Visualize. Now, many of you have become very familiar in the SOLIDWORKS Professional package with this tool called PhotoView 360, this realistic photo rendering, and some of you guys can make your stuff look fantastic. There's a new tool that we're actually introducing sometime mid-year. I expect the launch to be sometime around March, but all 2016 users will have access to this. It's actually called SOLIDWORKS Visualize. Included with all SOLIDWORKS Professional packages, you'll actually have access to the SOLIDWORKS Visualize Standard. Now, SOLIDWORKS Visualize Standard is very similar in nature to what PhotoView 360 is. Now, I say that, let me show you an example of what the differences are. So we've all become familiar with PhotoView 360. Some of us understand the limitations, and some of us are very happy with what the final output looks like. With SOLIDWORKS Visualize, we get a bit of a different output just because this thing, the nature of the beast, where it comes from, where it originated from. So this is a comparison of something that was a side-by-side model, same material, same everything, as we're looking at this thing, something rendered in PhotoView 360 versus something rendered in SOLIDWORKS Visualize. You, as engineers, will still have access to both of these utilities using SOLIDWORKS 2016. So you'll have access to your PhotoView 360, but you'll also have access, starting sometime again, like I said, in March, to SOLIDWORKS Visualize. Now, SOLIDWORKS Visualize is based on another software that Dassault recently purchased for the SOLIDWORKS family called BunkSpeed. So if any of you guys are familiar with BunkSpeed, this is where it's transitioning to. Some additional examples of what the SOLIDWORKS Visualize output looks like. We have our Porter cable drill, it looks like. We have a set of headphones here on the right. All of these things are completely virtual. Now, when we look at these, some of these are very imperceptible from reality, right? Could anyone actually look at these photos and tell me that they weren't put on a table with proper lighting and actually someone took a picture of it? And some of you guys might be able to. Unfortunately, I don't have the eye for it. But looking at a couple of different examples here, we can even see stuff like jewelry, diamonds. If anybody's trying to do this in SOLIDWORKS, trust me, I have. It's not very fun. It can be very complicated to get this thing to work inside of PhotoView 360. BunkSpeed, however, is sufficient to render these things with pretty cool quality. And so the last example that I have here for you guys, we have a full rendered environment. So if we look, say you guys are the designers of these, fantastic houses, these glass doors, these whatever we're looking at here. I'm not sure really what was modeled and what's simply they're trying to render, but it looks amazing, right? It looks fantastic. This is actually something that you guys will all have access to with the new SOLIDWORKS Visualize. Again, it'll be available in about the March timeframe. So sometime right after SOLIDWORKS Worlds, you can start looking for this to be included in each one of your packages. You simply need to be using SOLIDWORKS 2016 to get access to this. Now, let's jump over and show you guys some other features outside of the SOLIDWORKS Visualize, outside of this PowerPoint. Now, for the first couple of things that I have, They might seem kind of boring, but in all honesty, right, we're engineers and we love that things that are going to make our lives easier and make our lives make these things more helpful. So what I want to first start off with you guys is showing you guys some new functions inside the SOLIDWORks Task Scheduler. In previous years, moving from one version of SOLIDWORks to the next version of SOLIDWORks was always kind of a risky business, right? Some of us weren't always particularly confident in how one version of SOLIDWORks was going to open up the same part as we did in previous years. New in SOLIDWORks 2016, we're actually getting this functionality for this upgrade assistant. So this thing will actually do a side-by-side analysis of a previous version of SOLIDWORks files with our new 2016 version. So we can see what the file looks like as it's opened in 2015 versus what it looks like in 2016. This thing will actually return back to me a report to tell me if it passes or fails some set of criteria. Now we don't have the functionality to go in and edit what that criteria is, but it'll give us feedback and let us know what the likelihood of this thing working or not working is. In some cases, we've all become familiar with trying to open a 2007 file. Sometimes the make goes missing. That's information we want to know as we start the upgrade process, right? We want to know how many files are going to have an issue, what files are going to have this issue that need to be repaired manually in the future. And this upgraded system will help us to get that report out and to simplify that process. Additionally, inside the SOLIDWORks Task Scheduler, for all of you users of CircuitWorks, you'll notice that there is a new feature as well called Build ECAD Files. The same Build ECAD Files uses that same backbone of the Task Scheduler to allow me to select a different folder or sets of files that the software will then go in and automatically build the ECAD files for me one at a time until it completes the entire list of it using our SOLIDWORks software. So I can start this essentially when I go home, right? At the end of the day, at 4 o'clock, I can start this Build ECAD file, push it to a folder, and all the ECAD files that are in there, all those EMN or IDF files that are pushed into that directory, will be solid models by the time I get back to the office tomorrow morning. Okay. Now, additional changes that I do want to show you are enhancements to the SOLIDWORks RX tool. So some of you hopefully know what the SOLIDWORks RX is. Let me get to it real quick here. SOLIDWORks RX is a diagnostic tool built into SOLIDWORks to try and help you guys figure out what's going on with the performance of SOLIDWORks. So sometimes your guys' computers might not act the way you expect. This diagnostic tool is there to try and help you diagnose what's going on, what's wrong with my system. This year, inside of SOLIDWORks, every time you launch SOLIDWORks 2016, you'll actually get a dialog box in the bottom right-hand corner if your driver version is out of date. That way you know going into the version, if you start seeing anomalies or problems, that it's probably a graphical issue. It's probably an issue with that driver that can then be updated simply by clicking on the error pop-up or by coming into the SOLIDWORks RX menu, going to our Diagnostics tab, and if we see this red X, we know that we can select this option, start looking through the different drivers that are available for our machines. Hopefully we're not all seeing this red X that I'm seeing, but I like to be cutting edge, I think, and try and use driver versions that might be a little bit too updated for what SOLIDWORks working. So you can use all the supported drivers simply by using this interface. Additionally, inside of the SOLIDWORks RX tool, there is that performance test that we've hopefully all seen in the past or tried called SOLIDWORks Benchmark. This benchmark test actually goes in and tests your computer so that you have a comparison tool between one computer and the next computer in an environment. You can even publish these results onto a website and see how you compare with other users of the software. This year, inside of the SOLIDWORks Benchmark tool, there's been added a simulation benchmark. So for those of you users in the simulation environment, you can actually run a benchmark on the simulation aspect as well, so you can see how your computer is performing simulation-wise. This might also be a great way to convince your boss that your computer is not as great as he says it is, and to get those upgrades you've been looking for a long time. All right. Last couple of things here. For those of you that have used our CAD admin dashboard in the past, for those users that are more in the admin role, or you might even be the CAD managers in your companies, there was the CAD admin dashboard that was introduced a number of years ago to allow you to evaluate system performance and to look at every system using your different licenses. So accessing it is simply done by jumping into the customer portal on the SOLIDWORks website and selecting this first icon here called CAD admin dashboard. Once you open that dialog, you actually come in here and you'll be able to see all the different computers that have installed your SOLIDWORks license number, showing all the different computers here, all their different settings and everything that's going on with the machines. This tool is not new to SOLIDWORks 2016. The new functionality, however, is the ability to go in and clean this thing up. So in previous years, you would just get a conglomerate of every machine that had ever installed on here. This year, you can actually go in and start to clean this thing up, start to either remove these things or to add these different groups. Groups, again, were always present, but the ability to come in and delete these things out for computers that are no longer in the company or have been kind of retired are now dismissed. All right. And that's all I have for the installation section. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and transition back to a couple of questions. After we finish the poll questions, we'll transition to our last section, which is our SOLIDWORKS family products. So real quickly before we jump into the polls, I forgot. The changes that we've seen this year, we've seen restructuring in the add-in packages, seeing utilities and FeatureWorks now included in the SOLIDWORKS standard. Our graphics card driver validation actually occurs on startup. So every time you open up SOLIDWORKS, it'll actually give you feedback and telling you if your graphics card is supported or not at this point. So that way, if you were to be using an old version of the driver, continue using it for a year and a new version comes out that's now supported, it will tell you, hey, there's a new version that now works better. We have Scan to 3D and Tool Analyst now included in the SOLIDWORKS Professional Edition. We didn't cover this, but we can deploy installs via IP. So for those of you guys on the very IT admin side, you can now select the IP address to deploy the install to. SOLIDWORKS Simulation, or SOLIDWORKS RX now includes a simulation benchmark, and we also have the Upgrade Assistant built in now to the task scheduler. And we'll transition into our last section, our SOLIDWORKS family products with Jared. Let me go ahead and transition that over.
All right, guys, so I hope you're all still with me out there. Today I'd like to continue talking to you about the some of the SOLIDWORKS family updates. So what I'm going to kind of introduce here or show that some of the improvements to our e-drawings, MBD or model-based definition, and of course this year SOLIDWORKS is welcoming the new 3D experience with SOLIDWORKS Industrial Conceptual. So for all you industrial designers out there, look for that and in the near future, some more info on that. So for e-drawings, some of the updated features we have in the nice viewer here are they introduced tab documents. So I'm going to kind of review these and then I'll show you in e-drawings. We'll jump in e-drawings and I'll kind of show you what they are. But tab documents, we now have rotation about a point. We have 3D views for assemblies. We have descriptions that can be outputted in the components list. We have a nice slider explode tool that's been introduced, as well as support for radial explodes. Model break view has been added, as well as undo and redo using the Control-Z and Control-Y functions. Another nice feature is units now remain the same in e-drawings as they did in SOLIDWORKS. So if you have something in millimeters, when you transition over to e-drawings, it'll remain in millimeters, and same with inches or any other units that are set up within SOLIDWORKS. Also, weld beads are now supported and displayed in the graphics area of e-drawings. Let's go ahead and jump over to e-drawings and take a look at a few models here. So of course we have our nice user interface for e-drawings, and everything remains the same. You now still have the ability to measure just like you did before, very easily, and you can see the units will remain the same as the part as the SOLIDWORKS model as they do in e-drawings. We now also have the tab documents up here, so we can have multiple parts or assemblies open in one e-drawings document. We can easily cycle back and forth between those. So now, as well as that, MBD is also kind of working with e-drawings, where we have the 3D views down here where we can have multiple views within e-drawings of each part. So we can cycle back and forth between our 3 views or our multiple views within e-drawings of that component. Another thing, like I had said, is the component description. So over here in the components, you'll see that I just have a bunch of numbers here. Well, to turn those on, you just need to go to your little settings, the gear up here, and then check the Show Component Descriptions dialog box. Hit OK, and you can see that now my component descriptions are populated through the component feature tree here. So that just makes things a lot easier to see and find in e-drawings. Along with that, we now have tooltips, or if you hover the mouse above the part or the component, you can see that I get a little box showing up what that part name is. So it's very easy to find components within my assembly model quickly just by hovering over them. Now also they've introduced a new zoom feature where when you're zoomed out, when you rotate the model, it is rotated about the center of the model. And when you're zoomed in, it is now rotated about the point, or about the mouse pointer itself. So that's kind of a nice feature. They're kind of trying to tie things back in with SOLIDWORKS. And we also have this new exploded feature. So in our model here, we have explode down here. We can now do a radial explode as well as a linear explode. And we have this slider bar that goes along. So we can control the motion over our explode just by simply dragging the slider bar back and forth to collapse and explode our components. Pretty nice little feature there. As well as the weld info in here. So you can see here I have an actual, in the graphics area, I have my welds and I have my weld callouts. That also goes hand in hand with the components tree. You can see I have the weld callouts in my components tree, which is another nice little feature there. So that's pretty much the additions that they made to eDrawings. Let's take a look back at MBD, or model-based definition. So for those of you who don't know, MBD is an integrated drawingless manufacturing solution for SOLIDWORKS, and it's been introduced to support some industry standards like MIL Standard 31000A, ASME Y14.41, and ISO 16792. And basically what it does, it helps companies define, organize, publish 3D product manufacturing information, such as 3D model data in industry standard file formats like eDrawings, like we just went over, and 3D PDFs now. And you can see here that it's been growing in popularity within the past couple of years, where in 2009 we had about 1.6% of CAD users using this MBD feature, and now we have in 2015 about 20% of CAD users. And we anticipate seeing some more growth in the usage of this tool based on some of these industry standards. So some of the updates to MBD, we have generic tables have been added. You can have multiple bombs. You can have multiple viewports now on your 3D PDFs, which is really cool. As well as adding PDF sheets. So now we can have multiple sheets within the same PDF. And we have 3D views tab visibility. So let's go ahead and jump into SOLIDWORKS, and I'll just show you guys a quick little demo on MBD within SOLIDWORKS, and then we'll take a look at the PDF, the features of the PDF. So this is kind of our MBD interface within SOLIDWORKS, and the way you get to this is just by simply right-clicking on your tabs up here. You can turn off the MBD function just with the checkbox here, and then it brings in your MBD, and you get this tab down here called 3D Views. Within that tab, you have a bunch of different options for different views of each part. So depending on what you want to look at within each part, you can create these views specifically for each component. And what we see in these views is all our planes, our geometrical tolerancing information, hole dimensions, all within 3D. So it makes manufacturing for the machinist or whoever's manufacturing these components just much easier to read than having 2D drawings. Within that now, we're also able to add very easy smart dimensions to lines instead of having to go from hole to hole or from edge to edge. So you can see if I select just a line, I get a dimension there. Very quick and easy way to add dimensions now. Same with these mounting holes. We can add dimensions from holes, and we can cycle around the holes adding horizontal or vertical dimensions. So if you select your two holes, you can see just by going around the holes, I can add a horizontal or vertical or even an angle dimension between the two holes very quickly. And then we also have the feature up here to publish. We have the 3D PDF template editor, so you can build your own custom templates for your 3D PDFs that you're going to want to output with your company's name, your logo. If you want to add a bill of materials, a title block on there, however many views you want to add of this specific component that you want to show. And then just by hitting the publish to 3DF, publish to 3D PDF, it will output those files and formats into a PDF where you can actually see all these features. So this is just a quick 3D PDF that I put together. We have our company logo on there. We have a nice title block. This is all customizable, easily manipulated within this PDF template editor. We have a notes block, and of course we have our 3D views here. So on the bottom you'll see the different views options that I have. And in my viewport here, I can easily I can rotate these views, I can pan these views, I can zoom in, I can do all these options similar to eDrawings or SolidWorks. You can change the views of the viewport just by looking at this little drop down and selecting whatever view you want to look at, or you can double click down here in the bottom and select, and it'll change those views for you. The other feature we discussed was having the second page. So now I have a multi-page 3D PDF here that we're looking at, and I have multiple viewports that are able to house different views of my model. So on the left here, you'll see I have the top level of my frame, which I can easily change by utilizing the drop-down. And on the right here, I have another view of a subassembly of this part, which I can easily change and have all the rotational features. Then as well here, I have on the bottom, I have on my bill of materials. And if I highlight or click on parts in my bill of materials, you'll see that it's interactive with my 3D PDF viewport up here on the left of my top level, and those parts actually select the parts in the viewport manager. So if I'm trying to look for a specific part, I can easily just click on those and it highlights within my model up here in the viewport. So those are some of the updates of the SolidWorks family. Went over eDrawings, MVD, and I hope for you guys to look for Industrial Conceptual later in the year. Thank you, and I'll transition back over to Brad.
All right. Hey, guys, I apologize. We're over our time slot. So that's all we have for today. Thank you all for attending.